He had a Stanley knife in his hand. He slit one wrist and slit the other one and went, "You're next." And he brought out this massive block of crack. The most efficient thing I could do is to actually make myself out to be a problematic consumer. But I once made a really bad mistake. I'd made myself out to be a connoisseur of amphetamines. And spoiler, I'm not. When he found that camera, there was no doubt what was winking up at him. I instantly knew there was a serious risk of them killing me. You know, you run away from wolves, they'll chase you. Well, if the universe is going to get me, you can come and get me. I don't know why they didn't just shoot you. Preservation of life is always the #1 priority of a police officer. That never changes. At that point in time, there was a huge amount of pressure on police to increase the arrests around drugs. And one thing no one ever told me about was PTSD. 20% of British cops have got some form of PTSD. Half of the rest have got potential precursor behaviours. You need to be looking after your cops if you want your police service to improve. The longer that people like me are on the streets, the more the violence increases.
This week on the debrief then, I've got an undercover narcotics officer, right? Former. I've got to add, right? He's not still doing it or he wouldn't be here, right? His name's Neil. How are you, Neil? You right?
I'm all right, Phil. How are you?
Thanks for coming on, buddy. Listen, the way we're going to do this today is I'm going to take you back to your childhood first. I want to know all about you, all right? So I'm going to give you a bit of a debrief, interrogation type style, all right? So we're going to go back. Growing up, how was you? Where'd you hail from? What'd you do? How was your parents? All that sort of stuff.
Oh, quite a relaxed upbringing, really. I grew up in a very sort of middle-class type of town.
Stable background?
Very stable background. The town was Buxton in the Peak District, which is quite a posh town, really.
Yeah.
So I was quite sheltered, to be fair.
So a nice, gentle type, good parents?
Yeah, lots of
stayed together,
countryside.
that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Walking the dog in the fields, as a child and, quite ideal, really, to be honest.
Cool. What about school? What were you like at school?
Lazy.
Okay.
Lazy at school. My reports were always is smart but could work harder. that was my standard report, really. So I suppose I couldn't wait to get out and have an adventure.
Did you do any outside of school activities? Were you a cadet or anything like that? Were you, did you play football? Were you, did you do anything outside of school?
No, I was more of a music geek.
Okay.
So I would spend all of my time hunting out music.
Okay. Did you play anything? Did you any instruments or anything like that?
I used to sing. So my first band I sang in was when I was 17, a heavy metal band.
Wow. Was that singing or screaming? Looking back at it,
I could sing,
yeah.
but I can wail as well. I can growl if I have to, with a bit of warming up.
What was the band called?
Neu Regal.
Right. Okay. So...
Apparently it was German, but no one ever explained it to me.
Yeah, that do. How did it do?
We did all right. We did, pubs and local parties and that kind of thing. That's been the limit of my music success throughout my life, really. Doing
fun. It's good fun, isn't it?
I love it. I love it.
Plenty of booze and all that sort of stuff.
Hanging around with musicians, talking music and singing.
Rock and roll, that's the way.
Brilliant.
So when did you start thinking about the police force?
I didn't, really. I wasn't one of those kids who would run around with a plastic policeman's helmet on his head. It was not something that even came into my brain. But what happened to me is I went to university by mistake.
By mistake?
By mistake, because I remember listening to this lecture thinking, why on earth have I gone to university to study business studies? It's incredibly boring and I've got no interest in it. So I dropped out of university, which, causes a little bit of a family crisis when your parents aren't impressed with it, with dropping out.
Yeah, because they just want you to do, they want to see you happy and doing your thing, don't they? But if you're not happy, you can't do it, can you? That would be advice I'd give to anybody at a young age. If you're not happy, pop smoke and get out of there, innit?
Yeah, the earlier the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't know what to do. I was thinking about going backpacking around Europe because a couple of my friends had gone off and done an adventure like that. So I was thinking about doing that. And then I saw an advertisement for the police locally. And I thought, well, that'd be different, right?
Yeah.
So I couldn't make my mind up about backpacking or applying for the police. So I flipped a coin and it came up heads. And so I applied for the police.
Wow.
So literally flippant about it.
You flipped a coin to go and join the old Bills. How was training? Where was training? What did you do? Where did you go?
My initial training was in Coventry at Wrighton.
Okay.
And that was horrible. I found it really difficult.
Lots of screaming and shouting and that sort of stuff, really. But
yeah, it was still in the age where it was based on a sort of military discipline type
So
of.
you did do marching about.
We
and all that
marched
sort of stuff.
between the classrooms, which was quite peculiar. And I found it difficult. I found the whole of the police training and my first 2 years really difficult because I only found out how sheltered and young I was when I got into the police.
Yeah.
And I'd grown up in a sheltered place with limited.
Do you think you were naive to some of the stuff that was going on?
I was incredibly naive.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, totally unprepared for what I'd taken on completely.
Okay.
I was in the south of Derby on the Ring Road, an area called Alveston and Allenton, which was apparently the highest crime rate in the county at the time.
Do you remember your first collar?
First one, yeah, it was a disqualified driver with my tutor. Funnily enough, I arrested the same guy on my own within my first 2 weeks on my own. A few weeks later, when I'd been called to a domestic dispute, and I was on foot, and I was the only person there. And this guy who had just been banned from driving because we'd caught him, and he was fighting with his wife. I went into the living room. His wife's in the kitchen. In the living room, there was a TV and one sofa in the middle of the room. Nothing else in the room. And he said, "It's you." And he had a Stanley knife in his hand. He slit one wrist, then slit the other one, and went, "You're next." And so I started running around the sofa, and he's following me around the sofa. And it was a bit like, it was almost like there's some music going on in your head. It did feel really farcical. And but bear in mind, I'd actually run 3 times around the sofa before I realised I had a staff in my pocket.
Yeah.
And worse than that, I'd run 3 times around the sofa before I remembered I'd got a radio to call for backup. I was just like running, this guy chasing after me with his knife. Yeah.
Hopefully he'll bleed out before he catches me.
That thought actually did occur to me. No, he's got to slow down. He's got to slow down before me, right? He's got to. Yeah. So that was an interesting.
Did he get you out of that end? Did you lift him? What?
He ran out of steam, sat down on the arm of the sofa, and by that time there was actually a car really close, so backup arrived within seconds.
Patched him up.
And I felt pretty useless, to be honest, because I'm stood there like, oh, he's given up. And then my 2 colleagues came in and lifted him. So.
You done all the hard work, and they got the glory for him downtown.
Yeah.
So that first, is it a couple of years you do on the beat, is it?
Well, it depends. I mean, I spent time patrolling in a car as well as on the beat during that first 2 years.
Any incidents spring to mind whilst you were sort of like doing the normal copper type work?
Oh God, there's so many things really. It was all the normal kind of stuff, helping people through sudden deaths and drug overdoses and lots of car accidents, just the normal bread and butter stuff, really. Yeah,
you say normal bread and butter, but a lot of people listening, you only ever turn up on the worst day of someone's life, don't you? Do you know what I mean? In a lot of instances, a lot of people, they don't understand, they don't get it. Do you know what I mean? They don't get what you see as a regular, what you see as, it's just everyday sort of thing. Yeah, mate, he got chopped up in his car. Oh, right, yeah, that's all right. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel you sort of like look at the world a slightly different way to other people now, do you?
Well, I think I did quite rapidly. I mean, when I was still attached to my tutor in the first 6 weeks, we had there was a car chase. So a traffic car was chasing this car that was travelling at over 80.
Yeah.
We were the car behind doing backup. And the car that was being chased crashed into a post box so hard that the post box was ripped out of the ground and I landed in a shop window.
Wow.
And then they went through and then into a wall. So pulling them out of that car, one of them vomited and then died basically instantly. There was all of those bodily fluids. There was there was the smell of petrol, which is worrying.
Yeah.
But you've got to you've got to get those people out.
Yeah.
And so that was my first experience of I might have flipped a coin to get here, but I've got a duty here, and I have to do what I need to do. And so that was one of the sort of first times I realised, I've got to take this really seriously.
But to get in there and do a proper job with these people, all right? Is there a stage where someone goes, there you go, son, you need some of that? Do you know what I mean? Have you taken it in the line of duty?
I've never had to take heroin.
Right.
I'm very pleased to say, because that would scare me a lot.
Yeah.
Never had to take crack. That wouldn't particularly worry me, but I'd never had to. But I once made a really bad mistake.
Yeah.
Really bad. I was doing a sort of long-term infiltration of this pub in Leicestershire. It was a weird place. It's in the village of Whitwick, but you had gangsters meeting from Nottingham, Derby, and Leicester in this one pub. It was bizarre. All the clientele were criminals. So I was hanging around in there, and the guy, one of the main targets that I'd got to know, who was doing antique burglaries, organised car thefts, like stealing tens of thousands of stuff a week. He was also a cocaine dealer. During that time, I'd made myself out to be a connoisseur of amphetamines, right? And spoiler, I'm not.
Yeah. So
he came up to me one day and he said, "Look, hey, mate, I've got a treat for you." And he held up this little bag with this toxic-looking pink goo in it. And I opened it up. It smelled like the urine from a glue-sniffing cat, like really vile, right? I knew it was strong from the smell. But the trouble is, I'd got a momentary reticence kind of across my face.
Yeah.
Momentary. And he picked up on it because I saw the momentary suspicion across his face.
Right, okay.
And I thought,
now
it's a moment, right?
Yeah,
it's a moment.
yeah,
and I know I've got to pour water on his suspicion quickly.
Yeah.
So I've got to show enthusiasm. So I knew I had to have it. So I dipped my finger in, got a lump, put it on my tongue, swallowed it. And he looked at me and said, "You'll need more than that with your tolerance." Oh, great. So I dipped my finger in again and had another lump. And within about 15 minutes, like warm glow in my stomach, heart was pounding. I was high as a kite because I had no tolerance to this stuff, right? None at all. I had to make my excuses and get out there, and spoke to my cover officer, said, "Look, this has happened. Right, fine. Dictate me your evidence quick while you still got the brains." So I explained, got that written down because I couldn't even write by that stage. I mean, I knew enough about the drug. I haven't overdosed. I know you need to take a hell of a lot of amphetamine to actually cause yourself.
But you had proper messed yourself up with it.
But it was not comfortable.
Yeah.
In fact, it was horrendous. It was really horrendous.
You're working undercover, right? At what lengths can you go? Because obviously you've got to be in a community and you've got to blend in with that community. You can't blend in with that community if you've got any traits of a policeman whatsoever, can you? So how do you go about? You're not normal. Would you speed in a car if you were driving with someone? Would you break small laws? Is there laws that you could break to sort of like put you on their side and prove that you? How do you prove that you're not a copper?
Oh yeah, I had great fun doing that. To be honest, there was a guy I was getting to know in Nottinghamshire, who I was sort of wooing him and getting really friendly with him because he was on bail for dealing heroin for a gang that was a principal target of the operation. So it was really useful for me to get to know him. He could introduce me to people.
Yeah. And
he did introduce me. But while I was getting to know him, I went shoplifting with him, which is fantastic fun. I mean, okay, I've got to get out a free jail card. I'm not going to get caught for it, but it was great fun, especially if you're working with someone else and you take it in turns to be lookout.
Yeah.
It's great fun.
If you had have got rumbled shoplifting with him, what would have happened? Would they? Because he's going to be in front of the beak on the Monday morning, isn't he? Or whenever it is, you know what I mean? In the next couple of days, he's going to be in front of the beak. Would you have to go in front of the beak?
That would have been a policy decision based on the...
Would they have had the capability of putting you in front of the beak as a sort of like show? Tell the beak, right, this one's a copper. You're going to give him the same as that one, which is a fine. Only this one ain't going to pay.
Yeah, I could go through the court system, but the easiest way to do it is to slow it down because the operation's 7 months, and this is like a couple of months in.
So you put him on remand and you on remand as well, and so you're both on remand.
Well, I mean, I'd get bail.
Right. Okay. So you both get bail, but you both get sort of like, yeah, right. You're going to have to come back to court and see.
And then there's ways and means of slowing down the court system.
Okay.
But if necessary, if I had to do the court, then I'd do it. It's coming to the end of the operation, and this particular guy was a very well connected gangster. So it was just pure luck that I'd managed to score off him so early on, because every time I tried to speak to him after then, he was really hands off because he was a step up away from the street. So I thought, how am I going to get him on camera? Because we had no corroborating evidence about him. So I thought, well, and he's really into his clothes. Let's get some counterfeit clothes and I'll sell him some counterfeit clothes. But at least I've got him on camera, and then the evidence, I can say that's the man I bought from 6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Simple, you think. So I got these really good counterfeit Stone Island jackets. They were great.
You still got any?
I've still got one, actually.
Oh, would it fit me?
So, and they, all of these people, they love Stone Island stuff at the time, especially the jumpers and stuff. I traded in some of them sometimes. But anyway, phoned him up, told him I got these jackets, and arranged to meet him in this car park. It was near to the inner ring road in Leicester. So it was sort of in the middle of the city, but actually quite secluded because it's an
Yeah.
empty car park. And he turned up with two of his mates. So I knew him well enough and he trusted me,
Yeah.
but his two mates had never met me before. So he turns up and he says, all right, you just want to sell me these or do you want something? And I'm thinking, well, I've only ever bought heroin off him. If I buy crack off him, he'll get another 12 months in prison. So I says, well, if you carry him white, I'll have a 20 stone off you, right? And he says, fine. And he brought out this massive block of crack. Like you remember VHS videos. It's like bigger than a VHS video.
Wow.
It's a huge amount of crack. So he sits in his car in the driver's seat and he's cutting it with a little blade. And his mates are looking at me and one of them suddenly pushes me against this metal railing at the end of the car park and starts searching my clothes. And I says, what are you fucking doing picking at my clothes? And he's, and this is not James Bond tech, right?
Yeah.
I was wearing this blue denim jacket with a metal stud button
Yeah.
with a hole in the middle with a camera in it. When he found that camera, there was no doubt what was winking up at him, right?
Yeah.
No doubt at all.
Yeah. You couldn't pass it off as
No.
anything else.
And he said, he is as well. He's fucking 5'0", man. He's fucking 5'0". So I know, because it's a few metres behind where his mate sat in the car cutting the crack up. And I know the moment that he manages to communicate what he's found successfully to him, I'm done, right? I know the reputation of these people. They're not nice people. So I thought...
Done as in someone's going to proper run you through or you're going to get...
I think, I instantly knew there was a serious risk of them killing me.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, just to clarify that.
Just to clarify, yeah. So...
This is quite a big deal, the next couple of seconds on this in particular.
So what I knew I had to do is to slow down that communication, right?
Yeah.
So I just launched into a torrent of abuse. I says, what are you fucking doing to picking at my fucking clothes? It's not even my fucking jacket. What are you fucking on about? What are you doing picking at my clothes? And I didn't let him get a word in edgeways. This had the added advantage is this really shocked him a bit and made him step back and doubt himself because it wasn't the reaction he was expecting. So I just kept up this abuse and he's like, what? But. So he's doubting himself. So I'm taking advantage of this confusion by being extra aggressive with him.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, he's about 6'3" and spends all day in the gym. All
He's
day.
a proper lump.
Like literally all day in the gym. That's the, all three of them were like that.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the other jacket off the other one and started folding it up slowly and put it in this plastic container that it came in, plastic bag, really slowly. Because, you run away from wolves, they'll chase you.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm moving really slow and I'm starting to walk slowly, but all this time I'm not letting up on the abuse and I'm upping the ante a bit. You fucking picking, what the fuck are you? Who are you? Fucking picking at my clothes. It's not even my jacket. I kept saying that as well. I start walking slowly across the car park.
It's not even my jacket, just in case you find it. And my mate has a camera in his jacket. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even my jacket. In fact, I said I nicked it off Jackie this morning. Jackie's jacket. So I walked halfway across the car park and I'm thinking, well, I might even survive this. I don't know. And then I hear some running behind me. I'm thinking there's one set of footsteps. If I can spin round, punch him once, and then start running.
Yeah.
That was my plan. Turn round and it's my mate who's just been cutting the crack up. His mate who's found the camera is stood by the car still, shouting at him. And he's there with the and he says, oh, don't you want this ting? No, don't mind my mate, he's just a dickhead. I says, yes, he is a dickhead. Yes, he is a dickhead, and he's been picking at my clothes, and I don't know what the fuck he's on about. Anyway, he says, yeah, I'll have the ting. So I gave him 20 quid note, all perfectly framed on the camera, the handover. I put it in my little key pocket in my jeans and carried on walking. At this point, his mate's screaming at him, saying he's fucking heat, man. He's fucking 5'0". So anyway, he went back to the car, and I keep starting to speed up a little bit, but I'm still walking. And then the car revs, and the wheels spin, and it's coming for me across the car park, and I think, now it's time to run. But I was quite near the exit then, so I got to the exit, and where the car park exit comes onto the road, it's a dual carriageway.
Yeah.
And a pavement on the left-hand side of the road. So I'm running up this pavement, but because the dual carriageway comes up to a roundabout, there's steel railings to protect as you do round a roundabout, to protect the pavement. And I sprint and I just get to the steel railings as the car's mounted the pavement, coming up after me on the pavement, trying to run me over.
Yeah.
And I looked round just as I got to it, and it must have been 2 meters behind me. So it almost got to me. So then I went a bit further. The car couldn't follow me onto there. So I went back to walking and still doing body language, like, don't know what you're on about sort of thing. But from where I was positioned, I could actually get to a pedestrian part actually quite easily. So we separated quite easily because I could go towards the pedestrian area of the city, and they went round the roundabout a couple of times and then drove off. So I went back to the safe location, debriefed the team, told them the car registration number and the description. The intel guy went out to do the research, came back quite quickly laughing. And he says, I don't know why they didn't just shoot you, because there's loads of intel about them having a gun in that car. And, we all laughed, like hysterically. That was like the funniest thing anyone had ever heard, which is funny what you laugh at, really.
Yeah.
That's
the way of, it's just a coping mechanism in the world that you're in, isn't it? What would be the policy, say, for instance, if you're in a pub, right, and you're tailing someone and you've got to be in there because you're going to be buying stuff and all that sort of thing, and I get that. If you see other stuff going on in that pub, like, say, for instance, you witness a good old tear-up and someone gets filled in the pub, which does happen around these people quite a lot, doesn't it? You know what I mean? They feel it. It's quite often it happens around these people. He ain't paid his money wasn't there on time, he hasn't got the drugs, whatever. What would you be? What could you step in, or would you sort of like, oh?
Well, there's always lots of judgment calls there, and you read it as it's happening. And have seen people in receipt of violence, and I've seen people have a potential drug overdose, because even though I'm working undercover, my first duty is still the preservation of life. Yeah. So there could be the judgment where I step out of role, even potentially, if someone's life's at stake. Preservation of life is always the number one priority of a police officer. That never changes. Yeah. But it's a judgment call, and you have to read it carefully and hope you don't make a mistake, really, because I saw someone having a really bad reaction to a ketamine tablet, and it was getting close whether I do, whether I step out of how my role might act, but it was fine. And I've seen people dropped for a £10 debt. It was at the same pub where I had to take the amphetamine, actually. Someone owed that guy, that person who gave me the amphetamine, 10 quid. He didn't pay him up when he said. And he got one of his lieutenants to come over and punch him. Really? Punched him, and I thought he was literally floored. And when he hit the floor, he didn't seem to be conscious. And I've dealt with one-punch manslaughters as a detective. It happens.
It does. A friend of mine went inside for it.
Yeah, so that was a moment. That was just one of those uncomfortable moments, really. But it was fine. A few seconds later, he was all right.
Corruption. You've said corruption, the word corruption. And that's pricked my ears up. That is the first time you realised that was going on. When did you get a sort of like sniff that actually not everybody's doing the same sort of job as you are?
Right. Bear with me, because there's a little bit of a long response to this.
I ain't going nowhere, mate. I'm going nowhere.
So, for the kind of work I used to do, the model of how it was done developed over time in response to the problems that were presented to the work, right? Yeah. So eventually, the absolute model that had to be followed by everybody is this sort of cell-like structure with an exhibits officer and the intel officer and the senior investigating officer. It all had to be cocooned, as I've described to you already. Yeah. Had to be in a secret location, no connections with normal policing, all of that kind of thing. The day before I got there, that team would all be sat down and they would be given a lawful order. Now, a lawful order is a big deal in the police. You pay attention to it. And this was a written lawful order that everyone had to sign receipt of. And that order was, you must not ask the undercover operative his real name, anything personal, anything about his background, where he's from, or anything. You will be disciplined if you do. Yeah. That's to protect me.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
That's to protect me from corruption. Now, bear in mind, that only happens for drugs investigations. That doesn't happen for any other kind of policing. I mean, maybe terrorism, but no, not really, because we don't have terrorist spies in the cops. Yeah. That's because of the threat of corruption in policing. So the existence of that structure is in itself admission of the problem of corruption, that it exists.
And corruption being in people taking backhanders, people dipping into the stuff that's being sort of like toed and froed. What's the corruption element of this?
I'm a spy in their camp. Yeah. They have spies in our camp.
Okay.
Because organised crime is very rich.
So you get a policeman, perhaps, and I'm just going to suggest this, throw this out there, who might be struggling with his bills, for want of a better word, gets a bit of wind of someone on the other side, says, "I'll tell you what, I can help you out a little bit here, son," and then his bills get paid and you get dobbed in.
There are all manner of ways in which people get corrupted, but the corruption exists, is endemic, and can't be defended against.
Yeah.
So on that operation, there were so many hints of it. I remember going out one day, and the person who I'd been cultivating, I mentioned to you, who was on bail for heroin dealing, I'd been cultivating him, and I was getting him to do what I needed, manipulating him. It was working out well. Then he got arrested. And I thought, damn it, he's not going to get bail. Not with his record. He's already on bail.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to start working on someone else now, and it's a bit of a pain in the arse. Anyway, I was stood in the town of Mansfield speaking to 3 of his mates, and then suddenly I see him. He's walking towards us looking sheepish and a bit stressed, and I thought, how the hell's he got bail? And as he walks up, his mate says, how the hell have you got bail?
Yeah, so they're thinking grass straight away, aren't they?
So he came up to us and he says, well, mate, when I was in the police cell, these 2 detectives came into the cell and said, you can either give us some information or we'll let it be known that you have given us information. That's your choice. So I said, wow, man, that's some nasty blackmail, that is. So what did you do? He says, well, I can't tell them anything, can I? Because I don't know if they're working for the same person I work for. They went through a period of time where undercover operatives were being punched. First time they'd meet a regional dealer and then just sit back and wait. Their belief was that if they punched them, then the backup would come along, and they don't mind getting done.
So that was the litmus test for you as an operator.
Yeah, they thought, I don't mind getting arrested for punching someone.
That is bonkers, isn't
I don't mind. At least I've not supplied Class A.
Yeah, at least he hasn't got me stash and me cash and he's got the leg up to the next level and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
So, I mean, it never happened to me, but it happened to people I knew.
And how did they deal with that? They just sort of take it, punch them back, or?
Well, if it was me, my instruction to my... I mean, I was a pain in the arse to any team I worked for because I refused to have the backup anywhere near me.
Yeah.
So, in theory, right, the model is you have to have 2 backup ready to rescue you from something. But I said, I don't want you even in the same town as me.
Like taking a camera crew with you, innit? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you don't need that, do you?
No, because then I have to think about their behaviour as well as my own.
Yeah.
And I can't account for their behaviour. So I said, I don't want you. So it didn't make any difference to me, really. But if they were nearby, I would say, well, look, I can take a punch. Let's, it's not, don't worry about it.
Or would you wind one back into him? Would that be acceptable?
It wouldn't have been my role. My role at that point would have been more subservient.
Okay.
So it wouldn't have been appropriate.
So it would have been sort of like, oh, what do you do that for, mate? Type thing.
Yeah.
Leave it out.
Yeah. We've talked about PTSD, and that's a good segue into this.
Yeah.
So my organisation, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, or LEAP UK in the UK, we're active in Europe as well, and I'm on the board for the organisation in the USA.
Okay.
We're a drug law reform organisation. Essentially, that's our main campaigning point. And what we want to do is we want to legally control all of the drug supply to take the power away from organised crime, to tackle the...
You know what? I was going to actually ask you where you stood on legalising drugs. So this is music to my ears. You're answering my questions before I've even started.
Well, I am literally a full-time activist.
Okay, because I've said it for years. Sell it at the chemist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Sell it at the chemist. There you go. Packet of heroin, because he's going to take it anyway, isn't he?
Exactly.
He or she.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? They're going to take it anyway.
And if someone's using heroin problematically, if you're the supplier as a doctor, then you've got them somewhere where you can take care of them and you can direct them to treatment
and make sure
services.
they're not getting nasty gear and all the rest of it.
Exactly. Whereas organised crime are just exploiting those people who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? They might be people with PTSD. They might be people with childhood traumas.
Yeah, worse than that, they're targeting people. They're going, right, let's give him a bag of that, and then hopefully he'll get hooked on that and all that sort of stuff. It's honking. It's a honking world.
Exactly. And the people who develop problems with drugs, in particular heroin, are the people who have got emotional trauma.
Yeah.
Whether it's former military, whether it's someone was sexually abused as a kid.
I've seen the kids' homes. When I was in the children's homes, I've seen it all over the children's homes.
Exactly. So we should be taking care of these people, not leaving them to the exploitation of organised crime, especially as the money that organised crime is using from that exploitation is actually corrupting the systems. It's corrupting the police. So it's a mess, right?
Yeah.
Drug prohibition is a mess. So my organisation campaigns to end it. We want to take legal control. It should be controlled by governments, licensed retailers, doctors, not gangsters, right? So that's our main campaigning point. And I've written 2 books. I wrote a memoir. So if people want to listen to more of my stories, my memoir's called Good Cop, Bad War. And I've written a history of British drug policy called Drug Wars. But the thing I really want to talk about, plug, is in relation to mental health, because there is a mental health crisis in policing and broadly in emergency services and the military, right?
Yeah.
In the example of police, there's a study last year which suggests that 20% of British cops have got some form of PTSD.
Yeah.
Half of the rest have got potential precursor behaviours like hypervigilance, which could be an indication that they're on the way to PTSD.
Yeah.
That is a major mental health crisis, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, it's in recent times, politics, the police have done some bad things, right? There's been some high-profile individual cops who have created a reputation that all policing is in trouble, yeah?
Yeah.
That's a political crisis. We argue that you can't deal with that political crisis in policing unless you deal with the mental health crisis in policing.
Yeah.
You need to be looking after your cops if you want your police service to improve.
Yeah.
I think that's logical.
Yeah.
The same applies for fire service, ambulance drivers, and military. So, one of the things that my organisation does from an international advocacy point of view is we spend time at the United Nations in Vienna, and we do side events at the Committee on Narcotic Drugs, which is, so it's all of the world's nations meeting to talk about drug policy. And we do side events. Next March, we will be doing a side event where we will be demanding, and we will have a row of cops, from one from France, one from America, from different countries. There's a row of cops on this panel, and we will be demanding that the United Nations speeds up adequate therapy for police officers. And specifically what we mean by that is psychedelic therapy, because we've had 60 years of no advancement in psychiatric care, no advancement in treatment of PTSD.
Yeah.
And suddenly, in the last few years, there are these new treatments which are dramatic. I mean, the evidence for the treatment of PTSD from MDMA therapy, psilocybin therapy, ayahuasca, some of the evidence is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It really is. To the point that the only thing that's slowing it down now is ideology. Governments who don't like the idea of finally admitting that some of these illegal drugs have actually got some medical use.
Yeah.
And it's preventing people getting the help that they need. So we're going to demand that the United Nations speeds this up. We're talking about cops, but we will also mention the other services as well.
Yeah.
But we've got a row of cops saying this. We need to speed this up. There's a friend of mine, actually, who we speak alongside each other at events sometimes. He's called Keith Abrams, and he's former military, former parachute regiment, I think. He heads up an organisation called Heroic Hearts in the UK, and they campaign for exactly that, for the speed up access to psychedelic therapy for military vets. And his charity, he actually sends military vets to Peru to have ayahuasca ceremonies,
Okay.
a psychedelic experience. He's done it himself. He's now considers himself completely well from PTSD, and many other members of his organisation have done it as well. And he's a fascinating geezer. You should perhaps consider him as a guest.
Maybe try and get him on. Yeah, listen, it's been a fascinating talking to you today. I hope all this stuff that you're doing comes to fruition. You know, and if there's any way that we can support it, I'm sure we will. Do you know what I mean? So, like I say, make sure you put all our stuff up. We'll put all your stuff up for you. Send us all your links, all that sort of stuff. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully, you'll become a friend of our community that we've built within sort of like Force Radio, and we'll see you again sometime.
Brilliant.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Phil.
bud. All right, nice one.